If your son or daughter asked you, does God exist? How would you answer that question? That's our topic of study today on the Truth in Love.
There's a message true and glad for the sinful and the sad. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out, ring it out. It will give them courage new, it will help them to be true. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out, ring it out.
Ring out,
barely ring,
the word,
speeding away,
Lord, man,
message divine,
and see.
send it today.
Still far from Jesus, many live in sin.
Lost and those in doubt, darkness and doubt.
Welcome to the Truth in Love. I'm Eddie Parrish, your host for the next half hour as we study God's Word together. We're glad to have you with us as a part of our program today. Mark Teske is alongside today, my good friend and fellow worker in the Truth in Love program, and we're glad to have him on the program today. Mark, welcome.
Thanks so much, Eddie. It really is a pleasure to be here with you. We've been talking about talking with our kids when children ask certain questions. And in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, parents are given the instruction that we need to raise up our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And interesting, we talked last time about Joshua 4:21, where Joshua, in talking to the children of Israel, said, when your children ask, and we've talked about using the questions that our children ask as a way of teaching them, using that as a teaching opportunity for them. So this morning, let's talk about when children ask about God. Does He exist? What would you say about that?
Well, that's one of the most important questions anybody could ask, child or otherwise. And the thing to remember at the outset is that there are two diametrically opposed views to that question, two diametrically opposed answers to that question. One of them was expressed by a Dr. Charles Smith in a little booklet called Godless Evolution that was published in 1929. And in that booklet he said, in the beginning was matter, which begat the amoeba, which begat the fish, which begat the amphibian, which begat the reptile, which begat the lower mammal, which begat the lemur, which begat the monkey, which begat man, who then imagined God. Now that's one view. The other view was expressed by Moses in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 when he said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And there's no question that those two views cannot both be right. Because on the one hand, you've got one man saying there is a God. On the other hand, you've got somebody else that says there's not. There's no middle ground on this issue. And so we've got to reach a firm and right conclusion on whether or not God exists. And the question that we've got to answer is it reasonable to believe in God? Mm-hmm. Is it a situation where you just have to say, hey, trust me?
As much as I like you, Eddie, it's hard for me to just trust you blindly. We need to be able to come up with some evidence, some reason why I should believe you.
Well, I'm not offended in the least at that because that's the right answer. You can't, with this question or with any question, especially of a biblical nature, there's no way that we should expect people to just trust us, to trust me, to trust you, to trust anybody. They need to consider the evidence and make the conclusion, reach the conclusions that are warranted by the evidence. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Prove all things and hold fast that which is good. And that's going to be our purpose today on the program, is to present some of that evidence.
Well, let's take a look at some of that evidence that exists so that we can prove that God exists. What evidence would you present?
Well, there's the law of cause and effect, which some have called the fundamental law of all of science, that for every effect there must be an adequate cause. That's even expressed in the Bible, Hebrews 3 verse 4, where the writer there said, every house is built by someone, but he that built all things is God. The idea that every house is built by someone is cause and effect. A house is an effect. What caused it? Same can be said of the universe. The universe is an effect. It's here. What caused it? There has to be an adequate cause for the universe that exists.
And that makes sense. You know, as a scientist would say, this book wouldn't just ignite on fire without a cause. You know, there has to be heat sufficient to promote combustion. There has to be oxygen. There has to be fuel. All those things together. If one of those prerequisite causes isn't there and isn't sufficient, the book isn't going to burn.
Exactly. You remember the story of Robinson Crusoe? Mm-hmm. When he walked on the shore of that island and saw footprints in the sand, he knew that somebody made those footprints. They did not just happen. The footprints were an effect. There was something that had to cause them. And the same is true with our universe. It's an effect. We've got to figure out and know, first of all, that something or someone had to cause it.
It wasn't just chance that caused those footprints there, was there?
Absolutely. It couldn't have been.
And Eddie, when we look at it, there really are 4 inherent possibilities for the existence of the universe. The first one we'd say would be what? It's all just an illusion, doesn't exist?
Yeah, some people have said that. In trying to explain the universe, they don't explain it at all. They just say, well, it's just all an illusion. And that's really an explanation that's not worth much time to be spent dealing with it. It's like the fellow that had studied that type of philosophy for so long that he finally walked into his professor's office and said, I am so confused. Do I exist? And the professor just looked at him and said, who wants to know? And you know, I mean, it's that illogical. To try to claim that the universe is just an illusion is nonsense. And so it's not even worth our discussion.
Okay, the second idea is that the universe is eternal. It has always been here. It transfixes all time. Well, how would you address that?
Well, and that was a very popular view among scientists in years past. But in recent years, that view has kind of fallen on hard times, even in the scientific community, the atheistic scientific community.
Why is that? What would draw them away from this theory?
Well, they've finally been forced to accept the conclusions of fundamental scientific laws of thermodynamics and things of that sort. As a matter of fact, Dr. Robert Jastrow, who is a world-renowned evolutionary scientist who does not believe in God, said, and I quote from one of his writings, modern science denies an eternal existence to the universe, either in the past or in the future, end quote. So in their explanations of trying to determine the universe and its existence and why it's here or how it got here, even in recent years, the idea that the universe is eternal has fallen on hard times, and they know that because of fundamental laws, like the laws of thermodynamics that say things are running down, that the universe could not be eternal.
So if the universe was eternal, the sun, which is slowly burning up the hydrogen, making helium, would have burned up eons ago.
Yeah, eternal things don't run out. Eternal things have continuous existence, and it's clear that our universe does not.
Mm-hmm. The things that we see around us obviously show that's not the case. So the other possibilities, okay, so we have a universe that exists and that has to have had a beginning. So where is that beginning? Did it create itself from nothing?
That's also a popular view among some, that the universe, matter, simply created itself out of nothing. Now, it's amazing to what lengths people will go to come up with ideas that they will espouse, mm-hmm. as long as those ideas don't include a creator. And this is one of those. The first law of thermodynamics teaches us that matter is incapable of creating itself. In other words, think about it. If nothing was all that existed in the past, nothingness, how can nothing all of a sudden get busy and become something? If nothing was all that ever existed, nothing would be all that would exist.
So if there was a big bang, the question is, what banged?
Exactly. You have to have something that would be you'd have to have some kind of existing matter of some shape, size, and fashion to have been a part of a Big Bang, if a Big Bang ever occurred.
And what would be the cause of that matter that's been around in this state eternally to bang? What suddenly changed if it's been that way forever?
Right. You're back to that fundamental law that for every effect there must be an adequate cause, and these things don't answer it. It's not an illusion. That's ridiculous. It's not eternal. Even atheistic scientists deny that now. And it's impossible and ludicrous to think that it created itself.
So we come down to the conclusion that the universe had to be created from something. Now, could you define something for us?
Well,
and help us there?
It would have to be something or someone, some entity that is separate from and superior to the thing that it or he created. We call him God. And that's the only possibility that we're left with, is that the universe came into existence by an intelligent creator that is different from and superior to his creation.
It sounds to me like you're talking about intelligent design. That's a word that gets a lot of publicity lately. Intelligent design that's being put beside evolution as another possibility. Just what do you mean by that?
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
That I think illustrates intelligent design. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that I came into the studio today just beaming with happiness, and you looked at me and said, what are you grinning about? And I said, you got to come see my new car. I just got a Cadillac Escalade that you would not believe. Now, of course, we know this is fiction on a preacher's salary, but I've got this Cadillac Escalade. I mean, it is top-notch Corinthian leather seats. I mean, it's got the latest DVD players and Xbox and you name it. I mean, there is nothing that this thing lacks. It's got everything. And so we go outside and we look at it, and you're just amazed at this automobile. And you look at me and you say, this is the best looking automobile I have ever seen in my life. Where did this come from?
Thou shalt not steal.
Yes, and I'd add that, exactly. And thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's Escalade.
You got me.
And I looked at you in response to that question of where this came from, and I looked at you as seriously as I could and said, what do you mean, where did it come from? It didn't come from anywhere, it just happened. Now, you and I know very well what would happen if I said that seriously and expected you to believe it. You'd go call somebody to come take me away and put me in a room somewhere.
Mm-hmm. With rubber walls.
Yeah, because that would be a ludicrous idea. And yet, now here's the kicker. While we would recognize how dumb that would be for me to expect you to believe that a Cadillac Escalade just happened, we're being asked to believe by atheists and evolutionists in our world that the universe that we live in just happened by accident. Now, if we would believe that, then why can't we believe that something that shows the evidence of design, like an automobile, we know that where there's evidence of design, there had to be somebody who designed and built it. The universe shows evidence of design. Why can't we and why don't we rightly conclude that there had to be a designer for the universe? It's simple common sense.
It really is. If a Cadillac Escalade just shows up for you, it should just show up for me as well. We should see that happening time and time again.
Yeah.
If Cadillac Escalades just popped out of nothing, then everybody should be seeing this and should have a Cadillac Escalade.
Yeah, and it's clearly not happening, is it?
Not happening here.
And even the Bible says that for somebody to see evidence of design and not conclude that there is a designer, the Bible calls that foolish. Psalm 14:1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God.
Yeah. The psalmist also said in Psalm 19, verse 1, that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows His handiwork. Day unto day utter speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where His voice is not heard. Again, showing that design, the pattern of the seasons and the days, that just that by itself should tell us there's a God.
Exactly. And other passages make that same point. Psalm 139, verse 14. David said, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. David saw even in his own existence as a human being, as an entity in himself, that there was evidence of wonderful creation. In Acts 14:17, Paul said to a group of idol worshipers that there was no excuse for their idolatry because God, the God, had not left Himself without witness of Himself in nature. He said He did good and gave you rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling your hearts with food and gladness. There was evidence just in the changing of the seasons and in the natural world. There was enough evidence there for them to have concluded that there was a God to whom they were accountable. And yet they had made the wrong conclusion. Now Romans 1:20 makes the same point. Paul said there that the invisible things of God, since the creation of the world, are clearly seen, being perceived through the things that are made, even God's everlasting power and divinity, so that they may be and are without excuse. There won't be anybody that will be able to stand before God on the day of judgment and say, you know what, God, you didn't give me enough evidence to prove you existed.
The seasons, the fact that the sun and the moon come up, the design and everything. As David said, he was fearfully and wonderfully made. That design is so evident in everything that we see.
It really, really is. And there are so many areas of our existence in our world that, as you mentioned from Psalm 19, that just declare the glory of God.
And as we talk about this, I mean, some of these things are just beyond the imagination. I mean, the size of the universe, I can't even understand it.
Yeah, when you think about and even look at some of the statistics that scientists have given us, many of whom deny God's existence. To use Romans 1:28, they refuse to have God in their knowledge. They'll give us these statistics that absolutely stagger the imagination. And the size of the universe is one of those. You know, remember God told Abraham in Genesis 15 that the stars were innumerable, Genesis 15:5, and that seems to have been proven out. You know, the figures that I've seen, at least of late, scientists have estimated some 25 sextillion stars, which is a 25 with 21 zeros on the end of it. And now we can't fathom that. We can't wrap our brains around that kind of size. And you know, the existence of the galaxies in our universe. Scientists have already found over 1 billion galaxies. And our Milky Way galaxy is just one of the billion or so that they found. And it's as big as anything that we could even imagine. Scientists tell us the Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across. Now, light travels at 186,316.6 miles per second. Traveling at that speed, it would take us 100,000 years to cross the expanse of our one galaxy. And we've already found over 1 billion of them.
Yeah, I've heard it said that, you know, to try and understand the immensity of the universe, if you were to take this 100,000 light year Milky Way galaxy and shrink it down to the size of a dinner plate, that the whole universe in proportion to that, if you were making a model of that size, the whole universe would have to be the size of the actual Milky Way galaxy. That's how small our whole galaxy is compared to the universe. That just amazes me.
It is. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And think about these other evidences of design. We're told that the Earth rotates at the equator at 1,000 miles per hour. And
that's fast.
Yeah, the Earth revolves around the Sun at 70,000 miles per hour. And our solar system is traveling through space at 600,000 miles per hour. Those speeds are important as it relates to the things that we experience here on Earth. For instance, that 70,000 mile per hour speed is what gives us the length of our seasons on Earth. And it's just the right speed. If you were to take that speed and double it, then you would effectively cut in half the length of our seasons on the Earth, and you wouldn't be able to grow all the crops necessary to feed all the people of the Earth. Well, but you couldn't double it either. I mean, or you couldn't cut it in half, because then our seasons would be twice as long, and the same thing would happen. That 70,000 mile per hour speed happens to be just right.
As if it was designed that way.
As if. As if. The Earth is 93 million miles from the Sun, which happens to be just right. You couldn't alter that distance 10% either way. So if you did, if you changed it if we were 10% closer to the Sun, we'd burn up. If we were 10% farther away from the Sun, the Earth would literally freeze, and people couldn't live. That length happens to be just right.
All that precision as this entire solar system is going through space at this incredible rate of speed as well.
Absolutely. And the Earth is, the Earth is tilted at an angle on its axis, 23.5 degrees. That's important too. Somebody says, you know what, I don't really care for that. Why don't we straighten the Earth up? If you did, all the water on the Earth would run to the poles. You'd have vast deserts in between. The tilt at 23.5 degrees is necessary and is just right for circumstances to be what they are on the Earth.
Wow. It's incredible. What about the human body? We talked about that earlier. What about its design?
That could be an entire series of programs just in and of itself on the design of the human body. Let me just give you a few facts that scientists have told us about. Our bodies are made up, each individual is made up of over 100 trillion cells. And those cells, each one of those cells has in its nucleus DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid.
I remember that from biology.
And there have been a lot of studies done recently on the DNA and mapping the human genome and all of that. That DNA is put into the nucleus in a spiral staircase configuration. It's squashed in there. And that DNA is what is responsible for giving each individual every characteristic that they have. But only a portion of the DNA is activated in each cell to determine if that particular cell is a fingernail cell or an eye cell or a brain cell or whatever. And scientists still don't understand all that there is to how all of that activation works.
It would be like having the blueprint for the whole building in each brick. That's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. And yet only part of it is activated to make it a different cell from one of the others. And if every, and this is the mind-boggling thing, if you were to take the DNA out of every cell in one human being and stretch that DNA out to its length and then connect it end to end, take all the DNA out of 100 trillion cells, stretch it out, scientists tell us that DNA link would reach to the sun and back 400 times.
That's an incredible amount of data. And as scientists are trying to decode just one of those, doesn't it take thousands and thousands of pages just to explain one of those?
Yes.
And 400 times to and from the sun. That's incredible.
Again, it's something you can't wrap your brain around that.
No.
And speaking of the brain, we're told also that the brain receives nerve impulses from all over the body at a rate of 2,000 impulses per second. The brain receives simultaneous messages all at the same time from 130,000 light receptors in the eyes, 100,000 hearing receptors in the ear, 3,000 taste buds, 500,000 touch spots on the skin. And all of this is coming to the brain at the same time at a rate of 200,000 impulses per second.
No wonder it's so easy to get distracted.
Yeah. How does a brain keep up with that? But, of course, it just happened. There's no design involved in that. It's just accident.
Accidents do happen, but as we talk about all this, it's too much to have all of these things just been by accident.
Yeah. I couldn't convince you if my life depended on it, that this Bible that I hold in my hand just happened because some explosion happened in a print shop. Now, if I could convince you of that, I could convince you that the universe happened by the same process and that Cadillac Escalade that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Could you make 2 of those, by the way?
Yeah, I'll do what I can.
Okay.
We want to thank you for joining us today on the program, and we want you to study these things for yourself. There's so much information that we had that we didn't have the time to get to, but I want you to remember this one thing. If you were to walk outside your house today and you saw up in the sky, written in smoke, the words, "The truth in love," would you look at that and conclude that, boy, just, time and chance and happenstance just all of a sudden just came together and there it was, the truth in love, written in the sky? Is that what you would conclude? Or would you conclude that even though you didn't see the airplane and the smoke coming out the back, that somebody, a skywriter of some kind, came along and wrote that in the sky? I think we all know what we would conclude from that. And see, we didn't see the Creator when He created all of the things that we see and all the things that we are, but we do see the message. And the message is, God exists. If you'd like to have a copy of today's lesson, we'd love for you to have it. If you'll write us at Post Office Box 865, Hurst, Texas 76053, or email us at requests@thetruthinlove.com, or access our website, thetruthinlove.com, then you'll be able to contact us and let us know if you'd like a cassette tape, a CD, or a DVD, and we'll be glad to send that to you absolutely free of charge, no cost or obligation to you. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time on The Truth in Love.
Hear the blessed Savior calling the oppressed. O ye heavy laden, come to me and rest. Come no longer tarry, I your load will bear. Bring me every burden, bring me every care. Come to me.